Everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matter. Well, we have a very intriguing show for you today. I would expect that, like many viewers and listeners, you probably think you know a little bit about AI. You want to know more. You're a little frightened. But what does it all mean? Is artificial intelligence the end of human history? Is it a new beginning, or is it both? So I thought it'd be great to have somebody on the show who knows a lot about this, and we're very, very blessed to have Marc Beckman on the show today to talk about AI, talk about what it means, what the different challenges it presents, and also the great opportunities for humanity. So welcome to the show, Marc. It's great to have you on Gray Matter.
Leighton, it's so great to meet you. Thank you for having me. It's really an honor.
So Mark has written a book called Some Future Day: How AI is Going to Change Everything. Pretty aspirational title, but believe me, folks, he can back it up. It's a great book. Before we introduce you properly, I'm going to go to our framing aphorisms, which are about AI. Won't surprise you. First, from Elon Musk, who's delved somewhat into the topic. He says AI will be the best or worst thing ever for humanity. Nothing like equivocation to get us started. Next, from Bill Gates, somebody who's either respected or vilified, depending on where you are, who said humans should be worried about the threat posed by artificial intelligence. Next, from Eliezer Yudikowsky, who says, by far the greatest danger of artificial intelligence is that people conclude too early that they understand it. I think maybe I may have fallen into that category. And finally, from a man named Alan Perlis, I like this one. He says, a year spent in artificial intelligence is enough to make one believe in God. Well, I'm in favor of just about anything that causes people to believe in God. So if AI has that quality, I'm all for it. So, Mark, you've got this book, Some Future Day: How AI is Going to Change Everything. I want to start here, though. I know that you interviewed Melania Trump on your podcast, which we're going to talk about, and that she was the victim of what is called the deep fake. And just recently, President Trump has actually signed into law new legislation called the Take Down Act. Do you want to talk about maybe what a deep fake is, and how you ended up interviewing Melania Trump?
Sure. So let me start with the Take It Down Act because it really is very interesting new legislation. It was actually signed into law here in the United States, as you mentioned, by the president just yesterday. And it's really remarkable because if you think about it, the concept of artificial intelligence is still evolving. And yet the lawmakers here in the United States, in a very rare bipartisan showing, came together and then overwhelmingly voted in favor of the Take It Down Act. And to give you some context, Leighton, the victim in this instance was a young girl in Texas. Her name is Elliston Berry. At the time, she was 15 years old, and some bad actors in her school, some mean kids really, went ahead and they superimposed Elliston's face and her head on top of pornography. And they created what is called in the bill non-consensual intimate imagery, NCII. It's really just deep fake porn. And what these kids did, which is really horrific, they took then that fake imagery, that porn, and sent it all over the internet via social media platforms, starting with Snap, but then across the Meta platforms, TikTok, etc. In the morning, as I understand the story, Elliston wakes up and finds out that this is happening, and she's horrified. Her life is upside down, as any 15-year-old girl's life would be if they find out that, somebody created deep fake porn about
Yeah,
her.
you can just imagine.
She reaches out to her parents for help, and her parents did, pretty much what all of your viewers would do if their parents. They reached out directly to these social media platforms to take down this fake image of our daughter. You're ruining our life. But their requests fell upon deaf ears. They went unanswered, and as a result, they had nowhere to go. So, as I mentioned, Elliston and her family lived in Texas, and Senator Cruz, Ted Cruz, is the senator for Texas, and he stepped up with Amy Klobuchar, who's a Democrat, and
Right.
they said, "Look, if the corporation is not going to help our children, we need to as a government." And they enacted this law. And basically, what happens now is if a piece of non-consensual intimate imagery is posted and there's a victim who puts the social media platform on notice, the social media platform has 48 hours to act and take it down. And
Wow.
if they fail to do so, they're penalized with heavy
Mm.
fines. Um, there's a slippery slope here, and you and I could riff on it from a legal perspective, which I'm excited to do. Right, First Amendment issues will certainly come up, but it's groundbreaking because here in America, we haven't really held these social media platforms, these tech giants, responsible, but now we are. And that's
Hmm.
really what's happened. Now, you mentioned Melania Trump. Like she did a great job in ushering this thing through Congress. She played a significant role, worked with the senators and hosted a roundtable discussion. Elliston herself, the victim, joined the first lady. And then from there, the House pushed this thing through in an overwhelming vote of 409-2. The
Hmm.
two, by the way, were both Republicans, believe it or not. But it was 409-2, and then the
Wild.
president had this amazing ceremony in the Rose Garden yesterday, signed it in, and Melania Trump signed it as well.
Wonderful. Melania Trump has been kind of at the forefront of this, hasn't she? And I know on an episode of your podcast, you sat down with her, I believe it was in October, just prior to the election, the presidential election. And so she really has been behind this very much so, hasn't she?
Yeah, she really did a great job at championing the Take It Down Act through. It meant a lot to her. She's embraced emerging technologies, including Web3 and artificial intelligence, for a long time. In fact, she was the first one, really, in American politics to launch a digital asset, an NFT, shortly after she left Washington, D.C. the first time. So
Hmm.
this is important to her. And as you can imagine, kids are really important to her. Part of the Be Best platform, fostering the future, is to protect children in different ways, including from technology. So she really championed this. And I would encourage, if people are watching and they're fans of Melania Trump, I would definitely encourage taking a minute, not just to watch my interview with her, which you referenced, Leighton, but also take a look at the speech she gave at the round table, the congressional roundtable surrounding this moment. It was really telling.
Hmm. So, folks, we're talking with Marc Beckman, and we're talking about artificial intelligence. Marc has written a book called Some Future Day: How AI is Going to Change Everything. Marc is the CEO of the award-winning advertising agency DMA United, and he's executed campaigns for NBA, Pepsi, Sony, Warner Brothers Entertainment, NARS, Washington, D.C., Nelson Mandela, Gucci, and MOMA. Now, he embraces emerging technology to augment campaigns, including artificial intelligence and other related type of technologies. Now, Marc, with you is very intriguing. I've been looking forward to this very much. Let's go back to school a little bit, and maybe this is kind of pedestrian for you, but maybe just go back to basics and explain to people what is artificial intelligence exactly.
Well, I'll give you examples that people can relate to. Actually, artificial intelligence or machine learning has really been in our lives for some time. It's just that right now, the innovative part and the investment that's going into the ongoing innovation and enterprise of AI has accelerated everything
It's
tremendously.
huge, isn't it? It's unprecedented, isn't it? The amount of investment in it.
It really is, but it's going, and it will, by the way, Leighton, it will become the underpinning of all parts of society, and I speak about that
Wow.
in my book. I mean, I believe, I say this publicly quite a bit, and I feel very confident about it. I believe that artificial intelligence will fundamentally change our society, whether it's in the United States or Canada, all over the world, within 3 to 5 years. It's going to serve as
Wow.
a tremendous underpinning. So where has AI been for people? right? Like it's very simple. They might not realize it, but they're using artificial intelligence already. AI is working to predict weather patterns for us. AI is working to provide individuals with customized shopping recommendations. So if you go on a retailer like Amazon and it says, "Hey, Leighton, we know you love black sweatshirts. Here are some other options." That's machine learning. That's artificial intelligence. If you have a security system in your home, which also regulates your temperature in the house, the thermostat, that today is regulated through the use of artificial intelligence technology. But even on a broader level, the Canadian government is working to protect all of you, all of your viewers, all of your listeners, the audience here today from cyber attacks that are happening every single day, including to Canada, on your infrastructure. Think in terms of your water supply, communications, your financial system, your hospitals. There are bad actors attacking through the use of AI every single day. And Canada is already implementing measures through the use of artificial intelligence to protect its citizens. This has been going on for a long time at the local level in your house, in your career, through your computer or your phone apps, and then all the way up through the state level, whether it's the United States or Canada.
Wow, fascinating. Now, Mark, you had also written an earlier book called The Comprehensive Guide, NFTs, Digital Artwork, and Blockchain Technology. Now, can you explain what is the relationship between blockchain technology and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I'm happy that you asked that, Leighton, because I believe that within the next 4 to 5 years here in the United States, artificial intelligence and blockchain technology, crypto, will represent the largest growth sector percentage wise by far. And President Trump has really gotten behind this in a
Hmm.
major way. I'm a big fan of cryptocurrency and digital assets. I believe that the United States is going to fundamentally change the way our financial systems work. President Trump has taken some steps in that direction already. A couple of executive orders put us into a mindset or built out a spirit for the American infrastructure to allow for investment to come back, certainty through regulation. In fact, I joined the US Crypto Summit in the White House with all of the CEOs and leaders. At that moment in time, President Trump joined us, and everybody is very bullish here. It's going to happen. We're trending in the right direction, and it's important for a lot of reasons. It creates more value for consumers, for brands. It will restructure the way retail banking functions. It allows for even individual liberty, assuming that the government doesn't step in and create a central bank digital currency or a
Right.
CBDC, which we see in places like China now, and hopefully
Yeah.
not in Canada.
I think
Um,
it's in the works here. I think that that's what we're hearing, but who knows?
Is that right? Because that's pretty
Yeah.
scary, Leighton. I don't know if you realize,
Yeah.
but a central bank digital currency is very scary to me as it relates to individual liberty, because what happens is
Yeah.
then the government has the ability to control the population's, the citizens' behavior. So imagine
Yes.
this. Imagine if
Yeah.
the government says, "Hey, you Canadians, we need you to drive only electronic vehicles, right? And that's it. You need to only drive electronic vehicles. But we're going to ration electricity because our infrastructure isn't built in a way to provide enough electricity or enough charging stations throughout the nation. So you, Leighton, can only charge your car at these time periods or twice a day, let's say. But you're trying to get across the country. Let's say you need to go and charge your car a third time. Through a CBDC, the government will have the ability to stop payment at that charging station. They
Wow.
can restrict the way you behave. So
Yeah.
if I was Canadian, I would be very concerned. If the government's saying they're putting a CBDC in place, I would be very concerned now. A lot of your viewers might think cryptocurrency and digital assets is so far off. But remember, most people in Canada are using some sort of digital format, whether it's in work, communicating, taking in content. Their kids are
Right.
gaming. The next
Hmm.
generation is all digital, and certainly the form of payment will be cryptocurrency and other related digital assets. So CBDCs are a dangerous, slippery slope. In fact, I referenced that EO that Trump signed, and in it, he affirmed that we will never here in America have a CBDC because of that.
Well, what we have in Canada at the moment is a prime minister who's a central banker, and he's a very strong proponent, in fact, a pioneer in ESG. And so the concern that Canadians have is if we do get a central currency, that could also lead to things like what they have in China, where they have social credit scoring that will restrict your ability to make purchases and things like that, and even to travel, as you described. Which brings me to maybe the scary part of AI. I read that one quotation from Elon Musk. He also said this, kind of a reference to Dr. Faustus. He says, "With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon." And all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water. It's like, yeah, he's sure he could take control of the demon, but it didn't work out. Are we summoning the demon with AI, or is that overstating the case? Is that hysteria? What do you think about that, Mark?
To be honest with you, Leighton, there are a lot of faith-based issues with artificial intelligence. There are a
Hmm.
lot of issues that come into play, including like alien-like issues.
Hmm.
Um, but let's keep it very simple and scientific for the sake of this conversation, at least for this part
Yeah.
of our conversation. Artificial intelligence is algebra. Right now, it's predictive in nature, especially with generative AI. So if you text prompt and say, I'd like to create a new ad campaign for gray matter, and I want it to look, in a regal fashion, AI is going to predict what it thinks through the use of math, what it thinks it should look like, and come out with an output that creates that image for you. It's
Right.
simply algebra. Now,
Hmm.
what does that mean? It means that AI is a tool. Now, I'm sure you would agree, or I hope you would agree, that a gun is not going to kill someone. It's the person shooting the gun that
Right.
kills. The
Hmm.
gun on its own isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know a lot of people will argue this point, but it's true. Guns don't kill. The people shooting are the killers. And
Right.
it's the same thing with AI. We need to create and treat artificial intelligence as if it's a tool, and it requires safety and empathy and compassion and care. If a bad actor gets a hold of AI, it could be representative of the dark side. It could create terrible things from, literally taking over weapons to poisoning water supply to creating new types of bacteria, poisoning populations. This could all happen very easily. But this
Hmm.
is why it's critical that certain safeguards are put into place. And we're starting to see that conversation on a global scale now. So, President Trump, really the cornerstone of his 3-day visit just now to the Middle East with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE, created a $2 trillion package of money coming towards the United States for AI. And a big part of it, specifically with the UAE, is national security threat, security issues. And something that most people aren't looking at is the fact that since we'll be building all of these AI plants and labs in the UAE, what happens if a bad actor, if a terrorist is able to access those labs in the UAE to train a model to do bad things? These are real issues. So there is a dark side to it, Leighton. I know it sounds
Hmm.
crazy when I just break it down as math, as algebra, but you got to make sure that this tool, that this could be either a rocket ship and propel humankind forward in a positive way and create
Hmm.
real great benefits in medicine, financially, food, or this could be a disaster. It could be a
Yeah.
gun and somebody could shoot that gun.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about it being algebra and mathematics, but you're right, there is a spiritual component to this. There is to all aspects of life. Sort of reminds me of an episode of The Twilight Zone I once watched where there's a man who's got a little newspaper in a small town, and he's visited by a little man, strange little man who says, he wants to go into partnership with him and help him with it. And it turns out this little man is the devil, and he makes this man's printing press actually write all the articles. And it turns out that the articles actually begin to predict the future. And all the future events are terrible, including the death of this man's girlfriend. I won't spoil it, folks. You can go look that up on Rod Serling. But I mean, it does sort of invite these discussions, doesn't it? About, what is AI? Is it a tool? As you say, it can be either the best thing, or as Elon Musk says, either the best thing or the worst thing for humanity. I'm pretty sure I know which side of the fence that you are on, but what types of things are we going to need to do as human beings in order to make the best use of AI technology, Mark, and avoid maybe its most disastrous possible consequences? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So going back to our where we started the conversation with regards to deep fakes, I think it's interesting if we look at that for a second, Leighton, because you and I grew up in a generation where we were taught seeing is believing,
Right.
hearing is believing. So we spoke about the government stepping in to help our children and our grandchildren, but let's be honest, the ecosystem as it relates to protecting our children starts at home.
Hmm.
And I think we need to take that lesson that our parents taught us, seeing is believing, and teach our children today that they better not trust. If they see it, they need to verify. And a great example is a deep fake attack, a media propaganda attack that China just put into Taiwan about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. This was covered in Reuters. Everybody could go take a look at it. It didn't get a lot of news coverage, I'm sure, in Canada, but what China did was they used artificial intelligence to create video, print, and photography that was attacking capitalism and America in Taiwan to persuade the Taiwanese people to think that America and capitalism is a bad thing. Now, this was being broadcasted off of Taiwan's media platforms, again, in video, in
Hmm.
print, and audio. So, how would they know? How would they know? So we need to
Mm.
start to teach. We need to re-educate ourselves and our next generation about the fact that if you see it, don't believe it. And then Leighton, I think you and I are similar age-wise. Now, we need to think about our parents' generation too. If you're an
Right.
octogenarian, you don't understand what artificial intelligence can do. You're not reading, this is you referenced my book. This is my book. My parents haven't even read my book yet because they're like, I don't understand AI. But here's the thing about right, it's crazy. I'm like, read the book. But here's the thing about it. Right now, a synthetic voice replica is so easy to create with AI. So I can take your voice from your show and create a perfect synthetic replica of your voice and then use that to call your parents. And the voice will say,
Oh,
"Hey, mom, hey, dad, it's Leighton. I need your help.
yeah. See,
Send
this
me
is horrifying.
$25,000 right now." In
Wow.
their
Yeah.
wildest dreams, they would never think that this is possible. Why would they think that? So people are getting scammed through the use of deep fake AI at the younger generation, at the older generation, and state actors like China against
Hmm.
Taiwan. So my thing is don't believe what you see, don't believe what you hear, verify.
Right. And a big part of it is education. Mark, in preparation for our discussion, I conducted a little experiment. I had a conversation with DeepSeek
Okay.
about systemic racism, and I uploaded it back to the chatbot for self critique, and revealed the model committing, recognizing a barrage of what looked to me like logical fallacies, which were seeded with totally made up stories and numbers. And then when it was challenged, the AI euphemistically termed one of its lies a hypothetical composite, which is interesting. Sounds like lawyer language. When further pressed, DeepSeek apologized for another misstep and then adjusted its tactics to match the competence of the opposing argument. So this, to me, this was not a pursuit of accuracy. It was sort of trying to persuade me that it was right when I knew it was wrong. Now, are these sort of wrinkles in the AI development that you think are going to be ironed out, or are these sort of fundamental fissures in the technology that maybe we have to just be aware of when we're using AI? What do you think about that?
Yeah, Leighton, it goes back to what we were talking about with the dangers of a central bank digital currency.
Right.
It's a centralized power hub, and they are going to train the artificial intelligence, the large language model, with the way that they see history, with the stories that they believe, with the way that they want communism to come across the planet. Now, it's problematic in particular for our next generation. AI could be, fantastic and very wealthy for those people that are seeking knowledge and actually read. They do their work, they eat their broccoli. But this could be a disaster for the next generation who's just going to rely on whatever AI tells them. So with DeepSeek, you mentioned it, it's a Chinese app. It's been created by a hedge fund, but I'm sure financed by the CCP. And their rendition of history is very different than what you and I think. If you
Ah,
talk to it about the leader, Xi Jinping, he's a great guy.
he's a great
If you talk
guy.
about Tiananmen Square, that revolutionary moment
Hmm.
never happened. If you talk about
Wow.
the Uyghur, they tell DeepSeek actually says there's no slavery in China. You and I see differently. Now the problem is if our next generation isn't doing the homework and they're just relying on whatever AI tells them, the centralized hub, this communist perspective of history and of the worldview, our next generation will be hurt. They will
Hmm.
be
Hmm.
damaged. And that's what we're seeing. So, centralized power for both AI and for cryptocurrency is dangerous. And the same thing happens with some of the American models. So, think in terms of Google, their early version of Gemini. It was
Right.
totally reconstructing, what our America's founding fathers looked like, or
Yeah, I saw that.
they created
Hmm.
like a whole woke moment in time. It was pretty wild, actually. So, people do need to be careful. And
Mm.
you might get like, you could go like almost forum shopping in a way to kind of get closer. So, if you're a little more conservative and you'd rather, interact with an AI that is aligned with your conservative principles, you might want to use Elon's version of
I
AI,
have
which is
used
called
Grok.
Grok.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I have used it.
fantastic.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. And it's not just history and things like that. It's also the arts where AI is really revolutionary. I was on your X page, Mark, and I saw a post with it that had to do with Elton John. And Elton John says, a machine isn't capable of writing anything with any soul in it. And he sets out his opposition to the government's plans to allow AI companies to use copyrighted work. What do you suppose is the danger there? I mean, when we're talking about things like music and literature and art, obviously AI is capable of incredible feats of artwork, and also I understand that many modern music artists are using AI regularly in their composition work. Is there a danger that we're going to get away from the type of musicianship that people like Elton John built their incredible music library and catalog on, or do you think that that's an overreaction? What are your thoughts about that?
no, I think, first of all, I love Elton John, but I just don't think he understands technology, to be honest. He should do a little homework first before he gets involved in the conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, what's valid is that the way that music or different types of art are made is changing. So, as it
yeah.
relates to using generative AI for music today, you can write a song, you can create the music, you could distribute the music all with AI and even get paid on it instantly, right? That's something that could happen. You and I could do that together right this second. In fact, in my book, I give the reader tools to do that sort of a thing.
Right, I recall
Um,
that. Mhm.
right. But the reality is this, like, I struggled a lot while I was writing the book, Leighton, with this issue of, machine versus man.
Mm,
Will the beautiful artwork that comes from songwriting, from, fine painting, Hollywood films, will those talents disappear?
right,
And I think often about Bob Dylan, because for sure we could use ChatGPT to create right now a song of revolution. It will be catchy. People will like it.
right.
But I thought when I started the book that ChatGPT machine would beat the artist, would beat Dylan. But then the more I thought about it, I realized they can't capture the soul of these
Mm,
great artists. They
right.
don't understand what people on the street like you and I really
Hmm.
feel emotionally, what we connect with from a soulful type of way, from a faithful type of way.
Hmm. Hmm.
So in my opinion, I believe man will always beat machine, especially in the arts, because it's Bob Dylan's revolutionary song that captures the soul of humanity. Algebra cannot do that.
Right. So the mathematics cannot produce the type of emotion, or as you put it, the soul, um, that muse that drives human creativity. Cannot be replaced through this technology. However, someone who is artistically talented can use AI as a tool to assist them in creating great art, right?
For sure, and I think those people have great advantages. So think about filmmaking for example. A guy like Steven Spielberg really knows how to manipulate that camera to create
Mm,
a superior quality film. Now,
right.
the efficiencies through artificial intelligence are broad, but two in particular, time and money come into play. So imagine if a person like Steven Spielberg has the ability to manipulate the artificial intelligence so his films become more beautiful than anybody else using artificial intelligence. And because time and money is an advantage with AI, maybe someone like Spielberg could create five super compelling, gorgeous films within the same period that it would have taken to create one film. So I
Hmm.
believe that the great filmmakers, the great songwriters, the great photographers, if they use the tool in a way that um, kind of exploits their education and their expertise with regards to how to manipulate the analog tools, I think we're going to see some beautiful things. And I think it gives them an advantage.
Yeah, and in a sense, it really, the use of technology to create art isn't really anything new. You think of, Michelangelo and the technology he developed to create frescoes and how he made the Sistine Chapel, or, in a more modern sense, what Jimi Hendrix did with the guitar. Well, lots of people could get their hands on a guitar, but only Jimi Hendrix could make those sounds. Or, talking about film directors, someone like David Lean. He used, the same cameras that he used were available to everybody else, but only he could make Lawrence of Arabia. So it's an interesting point. One area where we know, or where we think, I know you think AI is going to have a huge impact, is in gaming. I'm not a gamer, but I have two sons who are constantly on the screens and playing games. And I saw a post you made talking about why brands need to get in the game. 3.3 billion players worldwide, and 66% of Americans under 40 are gamers. And so this is going to have a huge impact, you say, on advertising. I know you know a lot about advertising because that's principally your game. What do you foresee happening in this space?
Well, let's start with this concept. According to a study from Stanford, the ability for an individual to have a memorable experience is far greater when it's immersive versus that individual being lectured at
Mm,
or reading. So, in other words, if I was going to take a target customer, let's say it's a woman who's 35 years old and she wants to go on a shopping experience, and I plop her down into a magical world of Gucci, and she's interacting and it feels lifelike with the fashion designer. She's trying on clothing. She sees where the clothing came from. Maybe she cares about the environment and she wants her clothing to be, to have a soft footprint on the world. All of those stories will come to life. That's fully immersive. The memorability rate for that, according to Stanford, is almost at 100%. Now, if we're just lecturing in a straight way, or talking at that person through traditional advertising, it's not as memorable, not even close. I think it's around 5% or 3% at the end of the day. So I believe that we are going to have a radically different experience in the world of commerce vis a vis gaming. The other thing, because of these spatial environments, because of these immersive environments, it's going to apply to education in a massive way too, Leighton. Imagine like if you and I wanted to learn about the moon, we could either read or we could go to the moon. We're going to remember that visit to the moon. And what's really cool is that I have a client who's doing that now in the education space. And she actually partnered with a scientist from NASA who's been teaching AI at NASA for 30 years, who's been using AI at NASA for 30 years. So anywhere in the world now, you could go to the moon with a guy that has been working at NASA to teach you about the moon. So imagine that we're not just um, restricted or limited to our local educational platform. You know, schools might have great teachers, but certainly not the kind of at the level of like an expert from NASA.
Hmm.
Um, that's gonna be amazing. Now, gaming is going to change everything. I think, first of all, gaming usually brings technology mainstream. It's hard for us to understand that, but let's face it, it's the truth. It's a well-accepted medium that really does bring most emerging technologies mainstream, and I think you'll see that a lot with AI as well as with cryptocurrency and digital asset payments. The other
Hmm.
thing is I think we're gonna transform gaming, in a way where it's not just about gaming, but we're going to start to see like a new type of YouTube come out of Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite. We're going to start to see different types of digital assets that we haven't envisioned yet, different types of banking experiences that we haven't envisioned yet. We're going to see a big transformation in years to come with both crypto as well as AI through gaming platforms.
Mm, incredible. I want to come back, Mark, to something you were talking about off the top of our conversation. And this is this new legislation, the Take It Down Act. I know that in addition to being a former roller hockey player, you also passed the state bar in New York and New Jersey, so you have this legal background. There is, as you mentioned earlier, a tension between freedom of expression in terms of creating different types of AI technologies and protection of the public. And of course, we know, or people should know, that there's no such thing as unlimited free speech. That's a fallacy. There are always limits placed upon speech. But the difficulty is, where do you find that line? Famously, I believe it was a U.S. Supreme Court justice talking about pornography said, "Well, I can't tell you what pornography is, but I know it when I see it." How are we going to resolve that type of tension in the context of AI, where, for example, there is a need to protect people from abuse and hostile applications of AI, like what the bill that President Trump just signed, but also at the same time, we have to protect freedom of expression. How do you think this is going to be worked out in the coming years?
Well, let's focus in on the Take It Down Act for a second, and specifically the words non consensual intimate imagery. Now, what does that mean? So, for example, you mentioned Jimi Hendrix before. What happens if an artist creates an image of Jimi Hendrix and he's wearing, I don't know, a G string, right? Now,
Sounds like
is that
something he would have done.
well, but, like, is that non-consensual intimate imagery? What's the exact definition? Does it have to be full-on deep fake pornography, or is non-consensual intimate imagery where an artist interprets a
Right,
celebrity in a scantily clad outfit or
right.
in a
Hmm.
compromising way, but for the sake of art, and then posts it on social media? In my book, you might hopefully you remember, like, I speak about this iron triangle where
Yes.
AI is used to create content. So I could
Mhm.
create as an artist that image of a celebrity that is scantily clad or in some kind of a compromising position, but it's for the sake of art. And then I could use cryptocurrency to get paid as I wish. And I could use social media to promote that image, salacious image of the celebrity, but it's all for art. Now, is that non-consensual intimate imagery, or are you restricting my freedom of speech, my freedom of
Mhm.
expression, my
Mhm.
First Amendment rights? And I think it's going to be an issue. I think this is going to be something that comes up into the Supreme Court here in the United States. The other thing that I think is worth noting is the practicality of enforcement. with the Take It Down Act. So imagine if you're Facebook or Instagram, now you're going to have real victims calling and complaining, and that's a good thing. I think that's right. We want to protect our children, but what about people that want to hurt other people, where they're making accusations for something that's posted and it's actually not a
Yeah.
bad thing, or it was consensual. There's going to be a lot of that type of behavior as well. And
Mhm.
I don't think that these social media platforms are in a position where they're prepared to take all of the incoming complaints, whether they're valid or not, right now. What happens then when these privately held companies or these corporations are fined like crazy from the United States government, and they have to spend millions of dollars in lawsuits protecting themselves because they're saying, well, that wasn't NCII, or that was freedom of speech. It was artwork. All of these legal issues are going to pop up, and we just haven't thought it all the way through.
Yeah.
And I understand that that's usually the way that it works here in the United States.
Yeah, and it's not just in the United States. One of the things that is concerning, if you look at what's happening in the UK, where people are being arrested and jailed for Facebook posts, imagine what could happen if a deep fake could cause somebody to be arrested and wrongfully convicted and jailed. And sadly, in Canada, we have similar legislation coming into effect here. And so, I mean, that type of legislation is scary enough on its own without the implications, that somebody could use AI to create a deep fake just to take somebody out, really almost taking cancel culture to a whole new level. So there really are, when you sort of imagine the computations and permutations, there really is great evil that can be done with AI, isn't there?
Yeah, there certainly is. It could be used by bad actors in malicious ways, but it's not just about technology. Again, it's people. Like what you just described to me as like possible legislation in Canada, where it's if I understand correctly, it's like the next step would be like the thought police,
Right.
right? From there, that to me is a lot worse than creating a mean spirited image through the use of artificial intelligence.
Right.
People could
Yeah.
create that mean-spirited image with a magic marker, or crayon, or a paintbrush.
Hmm.
But the legislation that you're talking about in Canada right now, it's a step away from the thought police, and that also has a chilling effect on creativity, on allowing for human nature to grow. Like, think about this, Leighton. If you're afraid to post something on Facebook, then you start to train your mind to not you're not going to post something, so you're not going to think a certain way. And if you narrow your mind, if you train your mind over time to stop thinking a certain way so you don't post something because you can't post it, then you're having a chilling effect on the ability of mankind to grow. There is no
Right.
longer a marketplace of free ideas. Conflict and discussion is what has propelled us forward throughout history of democracies and capitalism and whatnot. But when you start to limit a person's ability to think, because that's what you're doing, really. If you're saying you can't express yourself on Facebook, you can't express yourself on X, you might be arrested. We're coming and we're knocking on your door, Canadians. Well, you're telling those people to start thinking, train your mind to think in a more limited way. And that has a chilling effect on advancing humankind. That
Hmm.
to me is worse than creating deep fake porn.
I quite agree. Folks, we're talking with Marc Beckman. He's the author of Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. He's also written another book that I haven't read yet, but I'm going to, called The Comprehensive Guide to NFTs, Digital Artwork, and Blockchain Technology. Mark, in reading your book, I don't know if you say this overtly, but I hope I have this sense correctly, that you see AI and its development as really a bulwark for freedom, and really, if it's handled properly, is actually going to fend off things like totalitarianism. But in order to do that, there's also a need, I think, to prevent governments from being able to get a monopoly on this technology. Um, First of all, do I have that sense correctly? And how are we going to prevent, when I say we, sort of we, the people, as it were, how are we, those of us who live in free and democratic societies, How are we going to prevent government from getting a monopoly on this technology? Because the danger there is that they could use it in order to consolidate power and to enslave people, as we're seeing in China right now. What do you think about that?
Well, first, Leighton, I want to tell you, like, when you make statements like that, people on the left will look at you and be like, "You're crazy." That is never going to happen.
They've said this before about me, Mark.
But Leighton, it's happening already. Like, think about
Yeah.
this. When you wake up in the morning, algorithms, AI, machine learning, are pushing media, news content, not just your feed on social media, but news content towards your peers, those critics that you have, in a way so that they are seeing the news that they want to see.
Right.
Right?
Hmm.
They're not looking at the same news that you're looking at. They're seeing the news that they want to see. They just don't realize that that's what's being pushed at them. They're not thinking about it. Right? And over, every single day, they get the same slant of news in a way that it's not fair and balanced. It doesn't show the left and the right. It doesn't show the pro and the con, the black and the white. It's not dichotomous at all. And what happens eventually within a culture is that if there's one centralized entity like the government, it's not just the news media that starts pushing a particular point of view, but the government will push the news media to do that as well.
Right.
And actually, like, we've seen a little bit of that here in the United States. I think that what Elon Musk uncovered after he purchased X was pretty scary. It was pretty horrific. If you see the government, they stood a little bit on social media platforms to restrict certain types of news and content and news outlets too, and to push certain narratives. And that's pretty scary. So the concept is if a government has the ability to create the narrative and then push the algorithms in a particular way, over time, they really could brainwash entire populations.
Hmm.
It seems
Hmm.
subtle and it will take time, but it's not far fetched. A lot of people are thinking the way they do because they're programmed to get just an algorithm with what that algorithm thinks they like. If you like conservative media and you want to hear conservative pundits, that's what's pushing your way on X and, in the news these days. So
Right.
once you get a government with a certain type of agenda, it's a slippery slope. So anything, as far as I'm concerned, that's centralized is dangerous in that way. It can manipulate uh, this groupthink phenomenon that you're having in Canada right now, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
It can manipulate that, and it's just part of human nature. We've seen it over and over again. And communism and socialism, they never end up good. It ends up with like millions of deaths and, lack of innovation in technology and medicine and all different areas. It's just crazy that we're even having this conversation right now, if you think
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah, well, it is, but we have to have these conversations, don't we? Because we can't sort of bury our heads in the sand and pretend that AI isn't here. As you say, it's not only here, it's been here for a long time. You mentioned that there's a scientist at NASA have been using it for decades. I had no idea that was going on. One more thing I wanted to ask you about, Mark, before we let you go, and we're so grateful for your time, um, is this concept of transhumanism. I saw, maybe you saw this too, an application of something called Neuralink, which is a project that Elon Musk has been developing. And there was a man who was unable to talk for many, many years and had this Neuralink implant. And then suddenly it was able to speak, to translate his thoughts into speech. There's a lot of fear about this concept of transhumanism. What do you think the implications are for AI in that realm? I mean, could we lose our humanity through those types of applications of AI as a brain booster, or is that again an overreaction to what we consider mysterious at the moment?
Yeah. So first, just for your audience, like, the concept of transhumanism is basically looking at a situation in basic, keeping it very basic here, Leighton. It's when technology and also hardware are used to enhance the human mind or the human performance. And, if you think about it, we're doing that already
Yeah,
in
we are.
certain ways. Like, I'm sure you have friends and family that have perhaps a pacemaker.
Right.
Um, you mentioned Neuralink. I wrote, I'm holding the book now. I wrote a fascinating story in my book. I interviewed doctors here in the tri state area that used brain chips on paralyzed patients and then ran artificial intelligence as if it was bypass surgery through the areas in the brain that weren't clicking, the neurons weren't clicking. And these doctors, this team was able to bring back to life the ability to feel and move in these paralyzed
Wow.
patients.
It's
Now,
marvelous.
here's the question, Leighton. If you have access to enough money to help a loved one move and feel again, or if you have access to enough money to put a brain chip in that will give you an advantage in the boardroom as it relates to access to knowledge for power, do you think that you're not going to do that? Everyone is going to do that.
Sure.
And
Of
I think it's
course.
going to create a divide in our society. The people that are going to lean in and start putting chips into their brain. So in real time, they have more knowledge, more power. And then the people who just don't have the money to do so. It's going to be
Hmm.
transformative. And capitalism pushes us in those ways. People will do that. Is it dangerous? I guess we'll find out. I hate to be so pith about it, but the reality is that you know, maybe it will be bad and there will be bad actors. I'm sure there will be some, but overall, it's going to, for sure happen and transform society. The example that you gave with Elon and Neuralink, I mean, that family is just the happiest family ever.
Oh
I have
yeah.
a friend
Yeah.
whose father was recently had a stroke and he hasn't been able to speak yet. And he asked me, he's like, "Do you know anybody that could help us? My dad can't speak, and it's about 3, 4 months in, and they have resources." So there are a
Wow.
lot of issues that come into that: ethics, morals, religion. A
Hmm.
lot of things come into play, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the future is so bright. We got to wear shades with AI, but at the same time, I guess with anything that is a revolution, there's going to be a great deal of adaptation, and people often fear change. But as you say, it's here. We've got to deal with it. Folks, we've been speaking with Marc Beckman. He's the author of a couple of books that we're featuring today on our reading list. The first is Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. This is a groundbreaking book. Celebrated professor, entrepreneur, author, and podcaster Marc Beckman explores the transformative power of artificial intelligence, AI, and how it's poised to enhance and perform all aspects of society, revolutionizing our careers, enriching our family lives, and bringing our communities closer together. We've been talking with him today about all of this, and I encourage you to not only read the book but check out his podcast, because he has a number of really fascinating conversations there with thought leaders about AI and its various applications. Um, the other book that we're adding to our reading list is also written by Marc. It's called The Comprehensive Guide to NFTs, Digital Artwork, and Blockchain Technology. And here, Marc talked about it earlier. Non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, are the most important digital innovation since the creation of blockchain and cryptocurrency. NFTs share the best elements of both of these, while also representing an entirely new step forward for technology. And he talks about how NFTs arise, how they'll impact art and business in the decades to come, and perhaps most importantly, how can savvy entrepreneurs position themselves today for success in the NFT-driven world of tomorrow. So, Marc, we're adding both of your books to our reading list. Thanks for writing them. I'm looking forward to reading the second one. The last thing we do before we go is you're obviously very well read. Are there any books or resources that have been meaningful for you, that you would recommend to our viewers and listeners? Not necessarily on the topic that we've been discussing, perhaps, but some books or sources of information that were meaningful for you.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Leighton, I've been going back into, I love literature, and I've been going back at this point in my life to some of my early favorites, including Thomas Pynchon and Kurt Vonnegut.
Ah,
And what's been eye popping for me, like Pynchon, for example, it looks like you're a fan too. Like, what's eye popping to me is like not just his gorgeous control of the English language, like really, really just paints a beautiful picture with his prose. But
yeah.
what he predicted is coming to life right now in places like Canada and the
Isn't
United
it something?
States.
Yeah.
Right, it's really amazing. So, if anything, I would inspire your audience to take a second and go back in time and revisit Vonnegut and Thomas Pynchon.
Yeah, it's amazing how fiction. You mentioned those books, and I was mentioning Rod Serling earlier,
Yeah.
but it's amazing how people think, oh, well, I don't want to read fiction. That's a waste of time. It's just fantasy stories. Wow, there isn't there. There's more truth in fiction than there is in real life. I mean, look at Shakespeare. I mean, there's all of life is in Shakespeare, which is why the left is trying to destroy him, so he's not taught or read or played anymore. But no, those are great selections, Mark, and thank you so much for sharing them with us, and for your books, and for taking the time today to share some of your knowledge and your insight about AI. It's a very important topic that I think very few people know much about. It seems, even though it's so important, it seems so hard to get really useful information about it, reliable information. And so, very, very grateful to you for doing that. Before you go, the last thing, could you share with people where they can find you and find, for example, your podcast and learn more about you and your work?
Yep. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. Well, first, the book, Some Future Day: How AI Could Change Everything, is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, all major booksellers, and it's a good time to buy it because it actually went to number one in AI on Amazon and sold out on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So
Fantastic.
it's restocked now. Yeah, I hope it's a good. I hope people find value with it. Um, and then for social media. People could find me at Marc, M-A-R-C, Beckman, Beckman, across all platforms, X, Instagram, LinkedIn. And as you mentioned, my show, Some Future Day, is on YouTube, and it's got some great stuff in there, from the First Lady to Rock and Roll Hall of Famers to Oscar Award winners, and a lot of other controversial figures. It's a fun show.
Yeah, you really get some great guests. I really enjoyed the episodes that I watched. So
Thank
keep
you.
up the great work there. And thanks again for being our special guest here on Gray Matter.
Thank you, Leighton. It's really a pleasure meeting you.